Hey guys, what's up? It's Alex here. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Formula One's most recent rejects and where they are here today. Now this isn't a series just having a dig at people. This is a series of people that were in Formula One for a couple of years, but then they just sort of fell out of love with the sport, or they didn't really get a good drive and they decided to go elsewhere. So that's what this series is about. This isn't about saying these drivers are bad. This series is just about, interesting stories in Formula One where drivers came into Formula One, left, and where are they at right now? Let's go. So first up we have got Pascal Maldonado. He was known for his slightly dodgy racecraft and his consistent crashes in his time in Formula 1 from 2011 to 2015. His last season in Formula 1 was that 2015 season with the Lotus team, which were on a pretty good year that year. I mean, they were pretty decently in the midfield. They had the Mercedes power unit in the back of that car. It was a pretty decent car. Romain Grosjean that year got a podium as well. Maldonado was quite consistently in the points as well. He was quite good that year as well. But for the 2016 season, Maldonado did have a drive with Renault, but they kicked him out and took Jolyon Palmer, remember correctly, instead. Or was it they replaced him with Kevin Magnussen? I can't remember which one, but they made a decision to kick Maldonado out and either took Magnussen or Palmer instead. Now, many of you probably won't know this, but Pascal Maldonado is actually really quick in the junior formula. He actually did a couple of years in GP2 and actually ended up winning the series in 2010. I think he had a record number of wins that year at that point in time as well. So a very impressive driver, Pascal Maldonado, in the junior formula. Still getting involved in accidents now and again, but he was still a very quick driver, and I think people were taking note of that in Formula 1. And of course, in 2011 he made the step up to Williams. Does a bit of an odd season for him. I think he didn't score a single point that year, Pascal Maldonado. I think he did get involved in quite a few crashes. I remember that memorable one where he crashed with Hamilton in qualifying, I think it was, at the Belgian Grand Prix. But Maldonado, maybe apart from his crashes, is quite well known for that fantastic race in Spain 2012. We went to take that Williams car, which hadn't won a Grand Prix in so many years. I think it was like 2004, 2005 since Williams had last won a Grand Prix. It had been a long time, like 8+ years since Williams had won a race. And well, out of nowhere, Pascal Maldonado, or kind of out of nowhere, Pascal Maldonado gets it on pole position after Hamilton's disqualified and just goes on. Very controlled, measured race, wins that Spanish Grand Prix, beating Alonso fair and square. Yes, Alonso was in a terrible car, but we'll dodge that point. Maldonado drove a fantastic race, one of the best races I've ever seen in my opinion. The emotion after that race for me personally was just up there. I was just like, oh my goodness, Williams has finally won again. So I was obviously overjoyed with that, and Pascal Maldonado afterwards, being quite heroic, saving, was it brother-in-law, I think it was, saving his brother-in-law from the garage, Manuel Maldonado, who's now racing in British F3. He saves him from the garage after Bruno Senna's car catches fire. I mean, pretty crazy race just in general, but Maldonado, after winning that race, has a bit of a crazy couple of years, but yeah, he eventually ended up out of F1 for the 2016 season and sort of just took some time off. But Pascal Maldonado actually is coming back this year in 2018, racing an LMP2 car in the World Endurance Championship, which is going to be interesting. Can Maldonado work well within the team and possibly go on to win some races in his category? I think it's going to be an exciting season with Maldonado. We always knew him as an absolutely fantastic driver on the limit. He was very quick on his day, but the thing is, it's World Endurance, it's long races, he's going to be doing long stints. Can he be ultra consistent under pressure for a long time? Fingers crossed. I wish Maldonado the best. I honestly quite liked him as a guy. I always found him quite a nice, cool, sort of, chilled, relaxed guy. Obviously slightly different on track from time to time, but in my opinion, I think he'll do well in World Endurance. I think, I've got my fingers crossed for him. But we'll definitely see over this season whether Maldonado can cut it in the World Endurance Series with the LMP2 teams. So next up we've got the Mexican driver Estevan Gutierrez. Now I kind of feel that he might have been in Formula 1 for a little bit longer if Sergio Perez wasn't there, because Sergio Perez obviously stealing a lot of the limelight, being very impressive in his years at Force India and Sauber. Not quite as impressive with McLaren, but you know what I mean. He's been very impressive throughout his career, Sergio Perez, and slightly stealing the limelight maybe away from Esteban Gutierrez, who did 3 seasons in Formula 1, 2 with Sauber in 2013 and 2014, and then one most recently in 2016 with the Haas team as a Ferrari junior driver at the time. Now, it must also be noted, Esteban Gutierrez had a really impressive junior formula. Not so impressive in 2009 with the Formula 3s, but in 2010 he made the switch to GP3 in its inaugural season. He goes on to win the championship championship, beating some pretty impressive drivers. You go look at the Wikipedia page and look at the drivers that Esteban Gutierrez beat in that 2010 GP3 season. I think you'll be impressed, but he goes on to race in Formula 2, or GP2 as it was known back then, in the 2011-2012 season. I think, where did he finish? I think he finished P3, yeah, P3 in the 2012 GP2 season. So he had a pretty impressive year, getting some race victories. He was racing for the main Lotus outfit as they were in GP2 back then, but he had an impressive season, I think, Esteban Gutierrez. I think probably worthy enough of making the step up to Formula 1 for 2013, which is exactly what he did. Then I'm not exactly sure what happened with Esteban Gutierrez as soon as he made it to F1. He had this impressive junior formula, securing lots of race victories, securing a GP3 championship. Valtteri Bottas went on to win that GP3 championship the year after Esteban Gutierrez. So you kind of feel like, where did it kind of go wrong for Gutierrez? He had the world at his feet, and unfortunately it just didn't work out for him in Formula 1. In the 2013 season, he scored 1 points finish, which was only his only points finish. I think it was Suzuka in, I think it was P7, I think he finished that race. We had a pretty impressive race and scored his only ever points in Formula 1 was in that 2013 season with the Sauber team, whilst they were somewhat competitive that year. 2014, the Sauber car was pretty bad. Suttil, I don't think, scored points. The best driver in the world, Adrian Suttil, never scored. I'm not being sarcastic, he's my favourite driver, Adrian Suttil. He is the best driver ever. But yeah, I don't think he scored any points that year as well. And then in 2016 with the Haas car, yeah, that was the most surprising one for me. I mean, I kind of felt that of all the years, he should have scored a lot more points, or should have scored some points in the 2016 season, because that Haas car was somewhat decent at stages, and Grosjean goes on to score I think 30 plus points, and Gutierrez scores nothing that year. So I think, yeah, you can understand why he was maybe not brought back into Formula 1 for the 2017 season. But this is not a dig at Gutierrez in any way. I think he was a really, really fantastic driver through the junior formula. I kind of feel like he lost a lot of confidence as soon as he made it to Formula 1, however, which is probably the reason why he maybe struggled and the reason why he never came back after the 2016 year. But after Formula 1, he did go to race in Formula E, and he actually scored points on his debut, which I think is quite impressive considering. I think a lot of people don't score points on their debut in Formula E because it's such a competitive series, so I think props to him. He did pretty good as soon as he made the switch to Formula E. He did a couple of races in that, I think substituting in for another driver. But in 2017, he made the switch to IndyCar as sort of like a full-time drive. It didn't particularly work out as well as he'd maybe hoped. Esteban Gutierrez, unfortunately for him, he didn't really sort of hit the ground running. He didn't really score too many points, and obviously you score lots of points in IndyCar because of the way the point system is, but he didn't really score many great positions, and unfortunately for Gutierrez, he didn't secure a full-time drive for the 2018 season this season, and I don't think he's got a drive at all this year from what I can see. I mean, I've been looking on social media and all that sort of stuff. I can't find where Esteban Gutierrez is going this year, so I'm not really sure. Is he going to be racing, maybe going to World Endurance or something? Maybe he can fill up an LMP2 spot. That's where a lot of drivers like Pascal Maldonado managed to go to because there are the slots available. But, as for 2018 Esteban Gutierrez, he might be driverless, which is kind of strange considering he's still quite a young driver. I think he's only like 25, 26 years old. So next up we have got Mr. Max Chilton, and of course I've got to put him on this list because he raced for Manor for a year and a half. Obviously they had the struggles through the end of the 2014 season, I think it was, in Chilton's second year in the sport. 2013 and 2014, of course, Max Chilton, in probably the worst car on the grid, doesn't manage to score any points. I think Jules Bianchi at the time does get a lucky points finish in Monaco. Maybe not lucky, I suppose. Right place, right time for Bianchi in Monaco that year, managing to score some points for the Manor team, which is impressive, don't get me wrong, but Max Chilton didn't manage to score any points in his Formula 1 career. But that doesn't mean that he was a slow driver. Yes, he probably was a few tenths off Jules Bianchi most of the time, but he did have a pretty impressive junior Formula Series career, basically, like the rest of the people on this list as well. He was pretty impressive in the junior Formula. I mean, you don't get to Formula 1 generally by luck, and Max Chilton wins races in British F3, wins races in GP2, finishes 4th place in GP2 in 2012, was it? Yeah, P4 in 2012, finishing just behind Gutierrez in that year. So both of them made the step up to Formula 1 in the 2013 season, but Max Chilton obviously just doesn't really have the equipment as soon as he gets to Formula 1. I mean, I kind of feel like him and Bianchi, if they were in a better team, maybe they were in a mid-table team. Maybe there's a chance they could score decent points together because in general, as I said, they weren't separated by too much in the seasons together as teammates. I mean, generally it was Bianchi to come out in front, but I would say there's not as much of a gap as maybe people made it out to be. So Chilton was a pretty decent driver, just never really had the equipment as soon as he made it to Formula 1. And unfortunately, he obviously didn't come back for the 2015 season, even though I think he did possibly have an option to go back with Manor for the 2015 season. So for the 2015 season, Max Chilton made this slightly strange decision to go to Indy Lights, which is like the GP2, Formula 2 or Formula 1, a sort of second tier in America under IndyCar. He goes into racing that series, and even after missing a couple of rounds, he was actually in the championship battle. So Max Chilton, pretty impressive once again. As soon as he goes back into sort of a more junior formula, managing to sort of compete, I'd say. Once he's got the equal equipment, he definitely manages to compete. And that decent season in Indy Lights means that he gets a call up to IndyCar for the next season with a Chip Ganassi team. Now, his first season in IndyCar wasn't particularly that impressive, especially with the Chip Ganassi team, who are one of the best teams on the grid. But his 27 season last year, I'd say, was somewhat pretty impressive because he finished P11 in the championship in his second year in the sport. Now, if you don't understand, IndyCar, they're all sort of stock cars basically. They're all pretty much exactly the same, meaning it's all really down to the driver, and meaning drivers that have been in the series a long time have a big advantage because they know the cars, they know the tracks. And Max Chilton comes in his second season, finishes P11 in the championship, leads the Indy 500. I think, you know, secures a couple of top 5 finishes and definitely quite a lot of top 10 finishes. So I think really impressive stuff from Max Chilton in his second season. But unfortunately, Chip Ganassi slimmed down their lineup for this season, meaning Max Chilton sort of switched over to the Carlin team for this year, who are sort of in their first year of IndyCar. And I don't think many people expect them to be challenging straight away. But that's the great thing about them all sort of being stock cars, them all, you know, all being the same car. It means that Carlin, even though they're in their first season, they have a chance. And Max Chilton and his teammate Charlie Kimball, I think it is, they have a chance of just competing this year, even though they don't have their sort of the backing and the resources that other teams that have been in the series for many years have. There's a chance. There's a chance. Max Chilton and Charlie Kimball, they have a chance at least of competing this year and possibly securing some top 10 finishes. I don't think that Chilton's 2018 season is going to be as good as his 2017 season because the Carlin team is probably not quite as good as the Chip Ganassi team right now, but as I said, there's a chance. I said that too many times in the last minute. Next up, we have Jean-Eric Verne, the French superstar who was sort of brought up by the Red Bull Young Driver program in the mid-2000 era. Now, as we mentioned, backed by Red Bull, you sort of get sort of all or nothing really. You get a chance and then they'll just cut you straight away. That's the sort of thing that happens in the Red Bull program. But Jean-Eric Verne was very, very impressive in his junior formula. He was sort of battling alongside Daniel Ricciardo. They were sort of rising through the ranks together. And Jean-Eric Verne manages to make it to Formula 1 for the 2012 season. But we should mention he did win championships. He did win the British F3 Championship, which back in the day, back then had huge names in it. If you go and look back at the old British F3 seasons, there were some really impressive names. I think he might have even beaten Daniel Ricciardo in that season as well. So yeah, he won that. He won Formula Renault 2.0 France, I think it was. So he'd won some pretty big series throughout his time. And he made his way through the ranks quite quickly and made his way to Formula 1 for the 2012 season. Jean-Eric had 3 years in Formula 1 between 2012 and 2014, and he scored 51 points for the team, which was Toro Rosso. Now, Toro Rosso, I mean, they're not having the greatest start to the 2018 season either, but they were never known as like a fantastic team. They were always probably known as like the 7th or 8th best car on the grid, so it's not as if Jean-Eric Verne was letting the team down in any way. Him and Kvyat, who was his teammate as well, they were pretty impressive throughout their time together in Toro Rosso. And who was his teammate in 20? I think is it Jaime Alguersuari? I feel like Jaime Alguersuari was his teammate at some point. Maybe he wasn't. 2012. Who was the second driver? Was it Buemi? I need to actually go and have a look at this. How could I forget? It was Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo was his teammate in 2012 and 2013. So, yeah, some pretty strong lineups in the Toro Rosso team. They were pretty, equal on points throughout the time in Toro Rosso's teammates, Ricciardo and Verne. But Ricciardo was the one that gets the jump up with the Red Bull program. And sort of Verne was sort of left to, to put it in a better way, sort of left to rot in Toro Rosso because there was not really any chance of him improving. But then the big announcement in 2014 that Vettel was going to be leaving Red Bull meant there was suddenly a chance once again for Verne to stay in Formula 1 and go to a big team like Red Bull. But unfortunately for Jean-Eric Verne, he didn't get the call up. It was Danny Kvyat, and even though I'm a massive Danny Kvyat fan, Kvyat didn't have the best season in the world. I think he only scored like 9 points that year, whilst Verne scored like 30 plus points. So yeah, it was very weird to see Kvyat getting the jump up, even though he did have an impressive 2015 Kvyat. He did go on to beat Daniel Ricciardo in that 2015 championship. I kind of feel that in hindsight, maybe Verne should have got the call up to Red Bull then. Who knows whether he'd still be in F1 with Red Bull now, if it was the case, because Verstappen's obviously come in, but I don't know. I kind of feel like Verne maybe, in hindsight, should have got the opportunity to go to Red Bull for the 2015 season. So after that move, leaving Jean-Eric Verne out of a F1 drive for the 2015 season, he made the switch towards the end of the 2014 season to Formula E, obviously with its debut season, the 2014-15 season. Jean-Eric Verne switched that series, I think to the second or third race. He goes against pole position in his first ever race, which is obviously very, very impressive. And he's gone on to win 3 races in the series since. Now, his first 3 years in the sport were sort of a bit like, yeah, he's decent, but he hasn't managed to go to that next level. But with the last couple of years, especially with the Techeetah team, I think that's how you pronounce it, Techeetah, he got a win last year in the 2016-17 season. Now he's got 2 wins in the 17-18 season. And he's actually leading the championship by 30 points right now, Jean-Eric Verne. So he's had a very impressive start to this season. About halfway through the year now, Jean-Eric Verne has over a race win ahead of the second place driver. So I feel like Jean-Eric Verne's in a perfect position to try and go for the championship this year. And Formula E is getting bigger and bigger and better each and every season. I think it's becoming respected by many, many people as a top series. Now, I don't think this will lead particularly to a Formula 1 drive with Jean-Eric Verne. I mean, I kind of feel like he deserves to be in Formula 1 still. I see a lot of people saying he's probably better than half the current F1 grid. But yeah, I don't know whether Formula E will lead to a Formula 1 drive, really. But there's possibly a chance. If he goes and dominates this season, if he finishes the season off how he's sort of started it, there's a strong chance maybe Jean-Eric Verne could be considered to go back to Formula 1. I definitely feel the talent's there if any sort of F1 team decides that that's a possible option for them in the 2019 season, I guess it would be. Now, I should mention that's 30 points at the time of recording. You might be watching this at a later date, or you might be watching this, or I might have just delayed uploading this video. I don't really know, but it basically might go out after the next Formula E races actually happen, so the points might be different. He might be like 60 points clear now. Not that you can score 30 points in a race weekend, but whatever. So the last person on my list is Pascal Berlin. Like the rest of the people on this list, he had an incredible junior formula, but I think this is slightly different because as he is a German driver, he was sort of tipped to be the next superstar. Could he have possibly been the next Michael Schumacher? The next Sebastian Vettel? A lot of people kind of tipped him to be that way because of his impressive junior formula and how quickly it risen through the ranks. So that impressive junior CV included finishing P2 in his debut season in the European Formula 3 series, which, if you don't know, is a highly competitive junior series where, well, basically you don't generally win it in your debut campaign unless you're someone very special, and to finish P2, not that far behind the leader, is very impressive from Pascal Berlin. Then for 2013, he made the switch to DTM, which is kind of strange, but if you don't know what DTM is, it's like a German touring car, but in reality, it's basically a Formula 1 car with a body. They're incredibly quick cars, and he made the switch to that at 18 years old with the Mercedes team, and by the time he was 20, he was a DTM champion, and as of time of recording, the youngest DTM champion ever. So the impressive results in Formula 3 and DTM meant that people were starting to come calling, and while he was still a Mercedes young driver, there were talks for maybe going elsewhere, but Manor and Mercedes linked up for the 2016 Formula 1 season, Mercedes supplying Manor with some engines to try and keep them going throughout the 2016 year, and that was the case. Pascal Berlin goes on to score points in a Manor, which is pretty crazy. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't have expected that one bit starting the season seeing the Manor score points, but Pascal Berlin being slightly lucky but managing to score points when other people were sort of failing and all that sort of stuff. He managed to keep his Manor on track, even though it was so much slower than the rest of the field. He still managed to beat people in quicker cars, and I think that's what a lot of people feel a little bit bitter about, including myself. Like, how's he not in Formula 1? He did all these incredible things with a rubbishy Manor and a rubbishy Sauber, and yet he's still not got an F1 seat. I mean, like, how? Many people thought he was actually going to be replacing Rosberg, including myself. I thought he was going to be replacing Rosberg in the 2017 season, last season. A lot of people thought he was going to be replacing Rosberg in the Mercedes team after Rosberg's shock retirement. But they decided to go a different route. They decided to go the Valtteri Bottas route, meaning Pascal Berlin was sort of left in a bit of a waiting year at the Sauber team, which were really struggling financially with the car out on track as well. They were bad. Sauber were really bad last year, and somehow Verline once again scores points in the worst car on the grid, but it was not enough. Neither team decided to come in for him. Even though he still has the Mercedes backing, he was not picked up by Williams, which was the main thing really. A lot of people thought he might go the Williams route because of that Mercedes backing and the way that Mercedes and Williams have been working the last couple of years, but it was not the case. They went with Sorokin and Stroll, and unfortunately for this season, Pascal Berlin has been put back into DTM. I mean, unfortunately for him, I think he's definitely good enough for being in Formula 1, but it's great to see him still racing in a top level sport, and if he can go and win DTM this year, there's a strong chance maybe he could be called back up to F1 in 2019. But the future is uncertain for Pascal Berlin in DTM because 2018 is actually going to be Mercedes' last season as DTM team. They're pulling out the end of the 2018 season to focus on their Formula E campaign. I think they're linking with Venturi, I think it is. But it leaves a lot of doubt over the future of Pascal Berlin. Could he go to the Formula E Venturi Mercedes team for the 2019 season? I'm not really sure. They've got two very good drivers in Mara Engel and what's the other one? Eduardo Mortara. Sorry, how did I forget him? Eduardo Mortara. Both very talented Mercedes drivers are racing for that Venturi Formula E team right now. And I don't know, can he break his way into that? I don't really know, but he's kind of like a dead end. If he doesn't win the DTM Championship this year, he might not have the contacts to, go Audi or go BMW or go whoever comes in from Super Formula. He may struggle to stay in DTM for 2019, and where would he go elsewhere? It's a tough one. Verline has really been sort of, to put it in a pretty blunt way, he's been sort of crapped on over the last couple of years. He's had so many bad decisions sort of made for him in a way. It's been tough for him to sort of prove how good he really is, but fingers crossed, Pascal Berlin in hopefully a competitive Mercedes car will be somewhat decent this year and hopefully battle for the championship in DTM. But the struggle is DTM is so vastly competitive. You go into a weekend with pretty much every driver in contention for the victory. It's like, how's he going to be able to sort of adapt to that? Whereas, Formula 1, he was struggling to score points. It's going to be an interesting one to see for Pascal Berlin in 2018, but at least he's got a drive, and at least it's with a decent team with Mercedes in DTM. So that is it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy. I like doing these videos, so please leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Of course, leave any other drivers you'd like me to talk about in this video. And of course, if you've got the backstory on that driver, let me know, and I can copy that and put it straight into a video. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy the video. Also, let me know about these. Do you think this would work? I mean, AFR Productions is my productions company that I sort of produce all my videos under, and it's sort of helping me sort of go up in the world a little bit with interviewing drivers and all that sort of stuff. So let me know. Do you think this is cool? Can this be adapted? I don't really know. This is just sort of a preview design. I just got them printed to see what it would look like. But I think that maybe once that's slightly adapted, we can make some slightly cooler designs. I think it might look okay. So let me know if you'd like to possibly have merch. I mean, I highly doubt anyone's going to want to buy merch, but I would not be doing any sort of merch for money, just basically because I want to do it and I'd set at the cheapest price possible. So, yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic day. Let me know if you'd like to see something like this, if it was slightly adapted in the future. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic day, week, whatever. See you soon. Goodbye.